Hi, everybody. I know we are still not at a great angle. Each week it's getting a little bit better. There's also like amazing handouts this week, which I will send and post. And Substack for the last thing. I'm 2 weeks behind on posting, but everything as it posts is in its section available for free to all subscribers under a new section on our Substack website. Okay, so we're going to get going. Thanks for being here.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
So handouts.
This is the time.
Handouts. So excited. Okay, so this is not perfect. Right? So lesson, right? We're like in effort, not perfection. It's not perfect. But this is, this has started because I was unable to find what I thought should be the easiest, most simple thing to find online. Or just like clone from any AI. And then like why is it not available? It's still a bit of a mystery to me. But part of it is that there is machlokas, a disagreement between which are the 10 sefirot. So there are 10 sefirot, everybody agrees on. Mm-hmm. But the machlokas, the disagreement is between the top two of Keter and Da. So you think about, actually many people know it from Chabad, which is Chochma, Bina, Dat. Mm-hmm. That's where Chabad comes from, Chochma, Bina, Dat, which is because the Chabad Kabbalah says that Dat is the third of the three intellectual sefirot. Mm-hmm. The Ari and other Kabbalists say that it is Keter. So I wanted to show you a complete view of this, right? We're saying, remember last week, we said there's no one way. How do we find our way through to be the best version of ourselves? And so I wanted to create an image for you that included both options without saying that it was either one or the other or making it seem like there was 11, because there's not. Everyone agrees there are 10 sefirot. And then a couple things that aren't here yet, but I'll also walk you through. Oh, I'm so excited. Handouts. Okay. Remember, the right side is expansiveness, male, outward giving, and that's your like unlimited potential of your sefirot. So you'll see that's your Chokmah, Chesed, and Nessa. Okay, they go down the right line. On the left line, which is your constriction, your restraint, receiving, and female. And now everybody, many people ask me, a couple of people even asked me today, but I think of women as being really giving and men as being harsh. Gevura, which is restraint, is a harsh restraint, and yet it's on the female side. So one is that, remember, we talked about the fact that it's based on the anatomy. And anatomically speaking, men give, women receive. Like that is the anatomy of male and female. The other is that we're talking about spiritual male, female versus kind of like what we would associate with male, female. And also, whether we're looking at the sefirot or anything else, we have to like unwrap all of the things we've added that come from Western thought, right? And like we've done that so much about what we consider as female, right? Like, so, I mean, another class that we can do sometime is like on the original Jewish feminism, which comes from Torah. Like, just a taste of that. Only Torah, only Judaism gives women property rights for thousands of years. When women were still property in most other religions to their husbands, women are given property rights in their ketubah, and women are given the opportunity to call for a divorce for very clear measures, including not being physically satisfied. And so I think that we are the original Jewish feminism, right? So when we think about like that on left side, right side, we'll consider that. So the top three are your intellect. And you see I did that bar across that says intellect because those are in the realm of the intellect. They're also what we say are the mothers, the imanu, and they are in the realm of nothingness. So whether it's Keter or Dot, but certainly Keter, which is the crown, it's above the body. You see how Bina and Chokhmah are above the body because they're really in this realm of the spiritual world. And very interesting, again, that we say that that's the female, the mothers, right? Versus we're going to do the patriarchs in the Midot. And why is that interesting? Because Torah tells us again and again and again that women are innately more spiritual. Women are innately more connected. So when we talk about this knowing, we talk about knowing within the unknowingness, right? That this is where we kind of become within the Shekhinah, right? The spirit of Hashem, the female side of Hashem, where in that silence, where we stop all of the like rules of everybody else and all of the noise, in that quiet, then we find our truth. Right? And the Keter, the crowns, this is our truth. And this is where we're going to end this whole course with the Keter, with your topic, with your personal purpose. So then Bina, Chokhmah, Dot are the two pieces that go in. And remember that one side is constriction and one side is giving. And when they come together, you get a balance. So if you're looking from an intellectual side, that was first one. Sorry, we're going really quick, but I'm trying to catch everybody up. Handouts in the back. Mm-hmm. And then we are looking at the Dot for Keter being the balance of understanding, right? So that if Chokhmah is, remember, it's like creative potential, right? Like I was a startup CEO. So I had a lot of Chokhmah because I was like, oh, let me think of an idea and I'll like dream of how to solve it, right? But on the other side, Bina, which the female side is like analytical, logical. Like, let's come to an understanding with the facts and figures. But Dot or Keter is where it synthesizes. And that's where you have synthesized understanding and wisdom. All right. So now we go to the next three, which are now we're into the Midos or the Midot. The bottom 7 are the Midot. We're doing the charts from, there's 3 different ones. Then when you get to these emotion ones, you have Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet, right? And we've talked about all 3 of those already in the class. So Chesed is your expansive love, right? Loving kindness, Avram, he steps out of himself, right? And then we talked already about Gevurah, which is discipline and justice and judgment and acceptance, the receiving side. And we talked about Isaac, walking through for 3 days, knowing that he was a korban, knowing that he was a human sacrifice, and accepting that and because of that, right, he was elevated. And then Tiferet, we talked about Jacob. And remember, we talked about he was the father of the 12 tribes. And because of that, he became Yisrael. And because of that, we became the nation of Israel, Yisrael. And Tiferet is the heart. And then what we're going to be doing today is, again, on the expansive side, Netzach, victory, endurance. And we're going to be talking about Avodah and Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. On the flip side of that, on action, which is like the acceptance of receiving good, is Hod, humility, and Aaron. And then you go straight down. So those 2 together, the balance of those are Yesod, which is the male genitalia, and we're Tikkun, the becoming co-creators in this world with Hashem, and Yosef. And then let me finish this and then I'll open to questions. And then Malchut, which is sovereignty, as being a shlichus for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and King David. So I'll stop now for 1 sec. Questions?
Have you ever come across a female equivalent to Yisod?
The Kabbalah say that Yisod and Malchut are like male, female, even though they're separate spherot.
But Yisod is so very repeatedly represented by the male genitalia.
Right.
So is there an equivalent?
Yeah, Malchut.
So
Malchut is the female genitalia.
Okay, because I didn't
it. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. So it's the female genitalia.
Been debating for
Yeah.
a long time.
Oh, I'm so excited.
To-
And I put some stuff. Sari, one of the sources that I gave, she's this beautiful Kabbalist here. And I sourced her books. She's really dove into how do we look at Kabbalah from a female side.
Oh my God.
And she's terrific. I've
Great.
spoken.
Really wanna look into
Yeah. I have. I gave the source, and actually, Rav Breitowitz had agreed that she was a great source for this class.
Amazing.
So yeah, she's doing really interesting work. So yeah, anytime questions. I love questions. In fact, let's check Substack. Any questions? Nope, I don't think so. Okay. Um, so again, you get into Yesod and then Malchut. Okay. And then this is our course. Now we have another handy dandy handout where I charted the whole course in a what happens when an ex-venture funded CEO becomes a Torah teacher? You get Excels. So what you have here is the what each class has been or will be, and the Sphira that I connected it to. And the purpose, and I will tell you again, the purpose is my work, meaning everything else is pretty ancient, agreed upon by all scholars. And the purpose is where I felt like I've been doing my work to kind of contribute to the, I don't know, the academic, spiritual, whatever field of, but what is so gratifying is that as I'm putting this together for you guys, I'm finding that others agree already, which is to me the most gratifying, like, so when I was working on this class today, and I'm like, well, Netzach, is Moshe, and Netzach is victory, but it's endurance, right? So it's not like, and here's the thing, Netzach teaches us that we have to do our work, and our work is not controlling the outcome. And that's Netzach. And that's Moshe. And how do we know it? Because Moshe never got into Israel. So just think about that for a second. He's like one of the greatest people of all time. He like totally sacrifices his entire life. He spends like hundreds of years like taking care of this really, really ungrateful, like tribe of people. And all he wants is one thing. All he wants is to get into the land of Israel. Now, remember we talked about Western glasses versus Torah glasses and understanding male, female. Now let's do that with this, right? So Western glasses is my success is in, now fill that in, my bank account, my title, my degree, my children's success, my home, fill it in however you would fill it in. And it's not just money that we fill it in with as Western glasses, right? We fill it in with like, my success is, that like they talk about legacy, right? People talk about that like, oh, we view your success as a legacy. Like that's still so Western, right? If that's all saying that my success is the outcome of what my efforts. And Torah says no. Torah says my success is in the effort. My success in Netzach is, now think about it, Netzach is victory. In fact, we say it about the war. Biyachad netzach. Save Shoresh. Together we're going to win the war. Okay, but Netzach does not necessarily mean that there will be a ceasefire and an end and there will be peace on earth. Netzach means that in the striving and the showing up, right, we are victorious. In the effort, in the work, in the day-to-day showing up as viewing it through Torah lenses is my success. So suddenly my success becomes, how am I being in this minute? How am I being in this hour? How am I being in this interaction? How am I showing up for the things I need to show up for? Right? So Moshe did it for hundreds of years. And through Western glasses, he failed. If his result was based on his outcome, he never got to step foot in Eretz Yisrael. But by the rest of every measure, he was one of the greatest people of all time. And not even like a person, like a really like a spirit here on this earth. Like we can't even comprehend. Why else, Moshe? He stuttered. Always. His entire life, he stuttered. And you can't say it didn't bother him. It did. When Hashem went to Moshe and said, I want you to like lead the people. And he's like, you've got to be kidding me. Have you heard me? I stutter. Right. And he did it anyway. And Hashem said, I know. I hear you. And I'm saying you're the guy. And he showed up embarrassed, ashamed, not self-confident, not thinking he was the guy for the job. And when he did show up, he was not thanked. So I want to go to the third thing when we think about how to have netzach, how to have victory like Moshe Rabbeinu. So last week we were talking that Moshe comes down and he sees the golden calf, right? And he's heartbroken, right? Because he had just been gone for 40 days and 40 nights collecting the Torah, 40 days and 40 nights after Matan Torah, the largest historical event of all time, when 600,000 men plus their wives, concubines, slaves, neighbors, everybody else, all the children, millions of people felt Hashem die, were revived, felt Hashem died, were revived, felt Hashem died, were revived, and then sent Moshe as their shliach to go collect the other 610. So he goes up there, he comes down, and last week we talked about, what does he see? The golden calf. Total betrayal. Total betrayal. And he goes off into his tent, and he finds out that he has to go back up again. He's like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, think about it. These people were freed from slavery. Like, this is not theoretical. This is not like, right? Like the Jewish people were like in chains, building the pyramids for hundreds of years, being lashed, everything you see in like the most horrific slavery. They were freed from that in a clearly miraculous thing. The sea split, right? They like get to the other side and they feel and see God. And then, and food, perfect food, falls from the sky, right? And in 39 days, the men were like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe he's not the guy, right? And so Moshe comes down, he's like, feels betrayed. So where do we get netzach? He goes back up. He goes back up, and for another 40 days and 40 nights, he pleads the case of Am Yisrael. And not to a welcoming Hashem, right? It's not like Hashem's like, oh, good job. Good job. I'm so glad you're here, like advocating for like these poor, inept, ungrateful, blah. Hashem is angry. He's like, and Moshe's like, oh, come on, please. Like they didn't mean it, but he knows they meant it. So he can't say that. Like he really has to like try to find a way for Hashem, and Hashem doesn't forgive. What? Not right away, not for a long time. What he gets is Hashem says, all right, I'll give you the rest of the Torah, but not unrestrained love. Like, let's see how this goes. But the point is, like, can you imagine being Moshe at the top again, begging the plate, right? Of your kids who, not that any of my kids ever had trouble in school. Not that I ever had to go to the Rosh Hashiva and plead the case for one of my sons or daughters, right? But imagine somebody who had children that needed to be pleaded for, right? And then you plead for them, and then they go and do the thing. Netzach is going back again to the headmaster and like with conviction. right? Showing up anyway. And so when we learn about victory together we will win. Together we will win. How will Am Yisrael win? I'm going to add this. I'm giving a speech at ACI in a couple weeks to men and women at large. And I'm going to put this in. So if you guys are there, you'll remember I said this, right? Because we do it this way. We do it this way. Together we will win. What is by understanding that victory is showing up anyway and showing up for each other. And all of the things we've been talking about, making space for all of Am Yisrael and making a way for all of us to move forward by understanding how Torah teaches us to do that. And this is also what we do in our relationships, right? Like Netzach is kind of the ultimate in, do you have like a good relationship? Do you have a healthy relationship? Well, let's look at it this way, not through Western lenses, not through how do you feel or how your inner child is, right? Let's look at this through Torah lenses, right? We talked earlier about, are you growing? In this one, are you showing up for each other? Like, and really, 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 this is where you get to it. And you know it, right? Like, you don't always agree, maybe for long periods of time, maybe for years. But like, if you're showing up for each other, like that's success. And that's sort of also something we can remember when we talk about how we can judge all of our relationships and sort of our role. You know, like I personally always feel like a failure as a mother, right? And like, how do I judge it? I can't judge it on outcomes. And it just so happens that in my case, it's really strange because my outcomes are really good. Meaning like if it was, I kind of wish it was based on outcomes because my 4 kids are all like helping Am Yisrael and doing these like really like positive things or whatever. But no, it's really in the, on the flip side when I'm like, oh, but like I totally failed because I didn't have like, I didn't do all of these things or whatever. But no, like, and this is what I keep telling you. The litmus has to be in the showing up, in the showing up anyway, in the showing up when it's hard, in the showing up when nobody's looking. And this is Netza. And oh my gosh, this is just so much fun. Okay. You also have a term sheet. So we're going to keep working on this. And I'd really like to invite all of you to help me in this. I mean, really, please remember that this is material I've been working on for over a decade, and it is hundreds of thousands of years of Torah wisdom synthesized. But this is the first time I'm like delivering it in this kind of way. And so catch me, like meaning none of this is perfect. These are all work in progress. I give you updates of the same documents. So this will hopefully start our like vocabulary, understanding what we're talking about. Because like, for example, today, when we're talking about Netzach, we're talking about the work, right? And the title of this class is Work, Money, and Purpose. Right. And so when we're talking about that, we start talking about bitachon, hishtadlut, avodah. And so this is what I like. So I was like, I got to get you guys a term sheet finally. So let's hit on some of these basic terms. So bitachon is the ultimate divine trust fall. And I think I've explained this to you guys before, is like you're at a corporate retreat or camp. Like they do this in camp, and like everybody gather together and hold your hands out like this, and the person will fall backwards, right? So that's like bitachon. But not just that I'm going to get caught. Bitachon is really believing and knowing that this world operates under a divine and personal plan, custom tailored for what our neshama each needs in order to, what do we know? Grow, to become closer to Hashem, right? To do our work and to improve ourselves in our relationship with Him. And so avoda is work, but it's divine service. So people say, like, I'm doing my avodah. It could mean avoda like work for parnasa, which is money. Or it can mean the kind of deeper meaning of that word, which is avodah, which is divine service. And so what we understand from this in connection with Netzach is that my purpose here in creation is to do my avodah, to do my work, to do my divine service, to get the parnasa, the money that I need to function in this world, by elevating everything that I do. And we talked about this in Kedusha, right? And elevating how we were doing it so that everything that we do becomes a more holy service. And part of the way we do that is by knowing what do we have to do, right? So hishtadlut is like my share. What I have to do is my hishtadlut, human effort. Okay. And then bitachon, right, is the ultimate trust fall. So bitachon, and imagine that bitachon and hishtadlut were like the same as the sfirot, right? Then like hishtadlut would be on the far side of constriction and toughness, right? On the female side. And bitachon would be this expansive trust, right? And so where it falls together is in my avodah. And in my avodah, in my showing up. So I'll say this another way, which is that there's kind of chance and what's going to happen anyway, or mazel, or ratzon Hashem, what Hashem wants, or even if you're able to see it as the grand master plan, letting it happen, right? That female side, that receiving, that like letting it be. Or there's the striving, right? And for those of us who've been executives at some point in our life and lived with that kind of striving, right? That striving, the striving, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we do have to work. We're commanded that we have to work, and that is a tikkun, a repair that makes us co-creators in creation, tikkun, a tikkun for the original sin of Adam and Chava in God Eden. So in the Garden of Eden, they could eat from everything but one tree, right? And we're going to go back to this story at various times because there's just certain stories that are kind of core to us understanding like how we ended up this way, right? And they were like, it was all perfect and heavenly and they could do anything, but they couldn't eat from this one tree, right? Now, I'm going to skip forward why and who, because that's awfully blamey. But also, it requires like a whole other class, I think. And let's just get to the end result, which is they both ate from the tree that they were not supposed to eat from. And from that, our entire world thereafter was in a fallen state. The world was no longer the world of Gan Eden and perfection. But now I want to remind you of another thing we've talked about. Remember the jack ball? The jack ball where you have to go down in order to go back up, and you get that momentum when the ball hits the ground. And remember, that's how Torah does growth. That's how Torah does growth. So actually, sort of like how it had to happen was that we had to fall from Gan Eden in order to come into this world to create a dwelling place on earth for Hashem, which is what he wanted us to do, to then become co-creators, right? Now we're going down, but then we become co-creators in the tikkun, in the repair, in the creation of the world, that when Mashiach comes, when we are in our next world, it is going to be higher than Gan Eden because we're going to have chosen. Because we're going to have been given free will, Bechira. And remember, when we talk about free will, I think Bechira is still on this. It might not be on there. Remember, we talk about the fact that like the chocolate cake has to be delicious, right? It has to be enticing to choose evil. Otherwise, it's not free choice. So the apple had to be fantastic, right? And we had to go back down because in this whole divine plan, we are then going to go back up together as Am Yisrael. That is the roadmap that we're on. So from that, Chava, Eve, was given labor pains. And anybody who's done there, been there, done that says that was, probably not an equal doling out of consequences between men and women. And Adam was told that he has to toil from the earth. He should toil for his food. So now this is different. When he was given Gan Eden before Hava was created from his rib, he was told that he has to work the garden. But you see, the work was not the same divine service because there was no Bechira, because there was no choice. And so what else does this teach us? Right? Remember, we have to do the work, and our work is not controlling the outcome, right? And the work, the netzach of the work, is the showing up. But also what it teaches us is that the work is the whole thing. The work itself is the thing, right? So a consequence of coming to a fallen state is that we have to work in order to have our food. Okay? But because we're doing that to rise back up in that Jack's ball, we're rising back up, then actually the momentum of the work becomes like the whole like prize, right? It's like going on a roller coaster, like up, 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 up. But like when you're going down, right? But like the whole thing is so what we also learn is that in the balance between bitachon and hishtadlut, we cannot rely on miracles. So what does that mean? So I get accused of this a lot because I'm seemingly quite laid back in the face of what would seem to other people to be uncertainty. Some would call that homelessness. I think that's a little pejorative of a term. But, like that I just continue to be like, well, Hashem has a plan because I like actually really believe it. But the other is that I'm really, really confident on a day-to-day basis that I'm doing my hishtadlut. And it's on the days when I'm not confident that I worry because I know I'm not in charge of the outcome. So if I'm doing my hishtadlut, then I'm really good having bitachon about the rest. If I'm doing my effort, my hishtadlut, then I'm good having bitachon, trust that Hashem is taking care of the rest. And remember that bitachon is not, like it'll all be fine, you'll all be taken care of. Bitachon is saying that it's all for the best. Now, this is like a really big thing to grasp, right? Because if I'm having complete bitachon, when my house is burning down, I'm able to be joyful. Right? I mean, but most of us are not there. Right? Most of us are not there. But if we can develop lenses of bitachon, right? Like just when we have Torah lenses versus Western lenses, if we can develop bitachon lenses, then when it seems bad, hard, unexplainable, we can at least allow for the fact that it could all be for the good. Like we may not be able to understand why our house is burning down, but we can make space for the idea that that may not be a terrible thing. Right? And so that we can remember I talked about finding what we focus on, right? And we go out and we focus on like the world being dirty and people doing litter. We're going to find that. We find joyful people. We're going to find that. So if what we focus on is the bitachon side of saying that Hashem has a plan and it's good, then we're able to be more joyful all of the time. And I really, 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 really believe and live this way. And I feel like I'm modeling that by telling you about what's going on with me right now, not a story back, right? Where am I going to be living in 3 weeks? I don't know. That's an outcome. What I do know is, remember, Netzach is the showing up when nobody's looking. So I know that when nobody's looking, that Hashem knows that I'm doing everything I have to do, even when it's hard. even when I'm not getting the outcomes. And so I have bitachon that all of this is happening for a very good reason. And so I'm so happy. Like, I'm so happy to know that. And I'm like really interested and I'm looking for it. And so I'm finding it. Right. So, like, we lit candles the first night of Hanukkah. Chag Sameach, everybody. Happy Hanukkah, the holiday of miracles. Right. And here we're talking about living in a miracle and not relying on miracles. So it's so perfect. And I lit candles with another friend who is another woman of about my age who is also alone here in Israel because she's welcoming me into her home. And as we're lighting candles, I'm thinking, how beautiful this is. Like, what a bracha this is. And now we're cooking for the Miluim in her apartment. And so that bracha is coming. And I thought, oh, well, other people are getting to see the bracha. Remember, we find what we focus on. If I was focused on the fact that I don't know where I'll be living in 3 weeks, or that I am, homeless, whether you call it, a positive or negative word, it's a reality. And I also I've been really struggling with this, like, because, and I told you it's the theme of my life. Like, if I ever write the memoir, that like one of the working titles is searching for home. And so I'm like thinking about this. My Rav has says you can't be homeless in your homeland, which is so beautiful, but doesn't 100% feel like it rings true when you actually are homeless in your homeland, you know? And so I was like, what is home? Like, what is the thing I feel like I'm missing? And I realized it's the place where you can do whatever you want within reason, meaning within like the laws of humanity. You can't kill people, you can't, but right. Um, and nobody can tell you can't do it. Right? So like that, like as a guest, you need to do the thing somebody else wants you to do. It's the right thing to do. Like if the host, if it's your home and you put this here, it gets to be there. But if you're a guest and you put it here and the host keeps it there, usually you need to put it there because it's their home. Right. And so I've been thinking about this a lot and I have a lot more to develop about this. I just want to check and see where we're at on time. Okay, we're doing great. Sorry, everybody. I switched to contacts. I'm so happy, but then I have to wear reading glasses because only people who are of a certain age understand my predicament. So I wanted to, okay, anyway. So I'm exploring this idea of home, and we'll explore it together, I'm sure. But I found what I focused on. I found joy and bracha. It could have been like, oh, it's the first day of Hanukkah and I'm not even lighting in my own like home, or like it could have been that, but it wasn't. Because, and what do we learn from that? That's the victory, right? And so the thing is that, when you talk about how like you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, don't judge a book by its cover, giving people the benefit of the doubt from what's happening on the outside, you really don't know if other people are doing their hishtadlut or not. You just don't. Like an alcoholic who can't get sober, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Like, you just don't know. Like, and nobody knows whether I am or not, right? So that becomes a thing between me and Hashem. And that is also where we find serenity. That's where we find when we're living a life in step alert enough, where we're saying it's not what other people think, because that's not my truth, right? It's getting to my truth, and my truth is in line with Torah because I know that that's an ultimate truth. And my truth is becoming the better version of myself and following my purpose. So if I'm doing my hishtadlut, if I'm showing up, and then I'm having bitachon, I'm having trust to the rest, I'm sorry if you don't get that or see it, but you don't have to, right? Because my work is between me and Hashem. So the other thing about bitachon and hishtadlut is that I think we get the percentages wrong in Western society. Like, so a bit. I have all of the right, I was a CEO, I've produced for 2020 and other like big national news. I like Bit and Venture forums, like all of these sort of like blah 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 successful things. But that my success is in all the moments you can't see. Right? Like my success is in the showing up when I showed up anyway. So your success is in your own showing up. And that I say, and I think I've told you this before, that it's like that I liken it to home decorating, right? I did say this to you. So we talked about the Kli, which is, remember the 10 sphere each came down in a Kli, which is like a vessel, a spiritual vessel, which you can, and if it's not on the list, let's make a note that I need to add Kli to the list. It's like I say it's like a big piece of pottery because it kind of works, right? Because Tikkun, remember, the sphere came down 10 in Kalim, and they're coming down and they shattered because the spiritual energy of each sphere was too great for the Kli to hold. And then the sparks came down from all of these Kalim through all of the world holy sparks, everywhere but Mitzrayim, everywhere but Egypt. And Tikkun Olam, which we're going to talk about in a couple weeks, is not loving your suicide terrorists who want to kill you. That's not Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is gathering the sparks of holiness. And when we gather the sparks of holiness, we become co-creators in the completion of the post-Eden world. Okay? So there's the sin, right? The apple is eaten. It's not exactly an apple, by the way. And there's the fallenness. And in that fallenness, women get labor, 9 months of it, in a lot of pain. Sure, anybody says it's not such a big deal. No, okay, for me anyway. Anyway, so and the men had to toil, they had to work, right? And so we become co-creators. Jack Ball's fallen, lower world. We have Bechira, free choice. Evil, good chocolate cake, very tasty. Ta'im ma'od, right? And yet we make good choices. And when we make good choices to become better versions of ourselves, we do our avodah, our divine service. Then we grow and we go back up, right? And we become better versions of ourselves and we lead all of the nations. Well, there you go. That's my book. Well, it's a good thing it was recorded. So what I say we're doing is we got to create Klis, right? We have to create Klis and open windows. And this is how I make sense of doing our Hishtadlut at this time, balancing it with Bitachon. And hopefully battery's going to last. If not, I'm going to plug in and you might not have such good video. So opening windows and creating buckets, home decorating for the win. So let's look at it from my homeless perspective, right? I'm looking at apartments, whether I think they're the right apartment or not. A big thing for me is Gabby's place. I would like it to become a center. Mm-hmm. I would like to have a center for Chesed, for Miolim here in Netanya. That may be the Ratzon Hashem. That may not be the Ratzon Hashem. Hashem and I may be aligned in that, but we may not be aligned. So how will I know? I have created vessels to be able to raise enough money over the month, right? With a nonprofit, tax deductible, following the laws of the land, and distribute it amongst thousands of people who follow me. And if Hashem wants us to have a center, then people are going to feel moved to give and ask other people to give, and we will raise enough money for a center. In which case, I will look at a completely different place to live so that it can house what I want to do with the industrial kitchen and that. Now, if that is not in line with Hashem wants, I am doing the things of getting my own apartment that isn't enough room and doesn't have the electrical and all to do the cooking. So then I'm looking at apartments like back on the Sea View, where I used to live and where I'd like to live, but couldn't accommodate the cooking in the center. Okay. Then what else am I doing? What are other clues? So I have a website. That's a clue. You see, that's like a clue. That's a opening of a window. We have a nonprofit. It's a clue. But then I'm also looking at my writing. Okay. But then I'm also taking calls back in healthcare. Now let's talk about that. I do not want to go back to consulting in value-based care, as important as it may be to some insurance executives, and as realistically expert as I am. Like literally, I'm like, it's not like I'm an expert and I would give expert advice and it would help people. But like I'm at this new version of my life and I'm really happy and I'm really contented, right? And I would like to do more of this life. But I have to do all of my cleaves for Hashem to be able to do the outcome that he wanted to do all along in the least painful manner, right? Because if Hashem doesn't want me to open the center, I'm not going to open the center. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's only going to happen because he and I are in partnership, right? And so if what he wants is for me to go back into healthcare and do my consulting, which happens to pay very, very well, and I could do from it was the life I thought I would have a year and a half ago. Before and here's the other thing, right? Netzach, victory endurance is about letting go of our expectation of the outcome. So it's not just letting go of doing the work of the outcome. It is letting go of the belief that we understand the best outcome. Because if we have bitachon, then the best outcome is exactly the one we're getting. You understand that? Right? If I really believe that Hashem is masterminding all of this for my own personal, right? My custom tailored nisyona, my custom tailored benefit, my custom tailored nace, my miracle, right? If this is all custom tailored for me, then whatever I have right now isn't just what I need, but is actually what's exactly best for me at this moment. Now, I know that's all, but that's why I'm sharing this with you in real time, right? I feel like I could tell you about when I had bitachon, when I had the cancer, and it would sound like, okay, well, back then, but I'm talking to you in the moment. Like, sure, like I have moments when I'm a little sad or confused or thinking like this doesn't feel ideal, right? Like, but I'm doing the work. And here's what's interesting is the person who's hosting me follows my work, right? So every minute it's a question of like, am I living the life I'm preaching to you? And I'll tell you, I was first embarrassed and then delighted because she was out of the apartment and I was doing my thing. What do I talk to you guys about? Show up, find joy, dance often. So I had the speaker blaring to Marvin Gaye, and I'm dancing my thing, and it's blaring, and she opens the door. And at first, I'm like so embarrassed, right? Because I'm doing my dance like not like I'm a real dancer, right? And then I realized she's heard me say to you guys, right? She's heard me write about like dance often. And so she's seeing it, right? And so part of our victory becomes it is when nobody's looking, but it becomes an opportunity when we get to share those moments with other people, right? And that becomes more of that when we're looking for the good of what we're sharing with people. And so what does it mean to not rely on a mirror? Because we have to do the work. And my love, my guide, my Sherpa, who all of these Refuah Shlema is dedicated to him with absolute completion. All of these classes, who taught me bitachon, who he wrote one of in the sources. I give you guys a list of sources in the beginning of the class. Is he has the steps of bitachon that like walk you through sort of understanding when you have to make a decision. Like, is this bitachon? Am I doing my hishtadlut? And it's really so everything that I'm going to tell you builds on that. 6 Steps to Bitachon by Chaim Goldberger. They have a complete Refuah Shlema. What I was going to say is that the question is, what does it mean to not rely on a miracle? And that's kind of hard for me personally, because honestly, I feel like I thought it was like a trick question because I'm like, have you noticed? Like, I'm walking. I am a miracle. I am relying on a miracle. Every step I take, every move I make, every breath I take, I'll be watching you, right? Like everything I do is a miracle. So what does that mean to not rely on a miracle? And here's what I've come to, and totally supports it. So I'm not like going all renegade on you, which is that what it means is that can I defend what I'm doing in the ways of the world? Okay. So I'll give you an example of that, which is that when I give one speech in America, one hour keynote at a conference, I earn enough to support my Israeli lifestyle in full for 8 months. So, right. Right. So now, if I get a speech like that, we would all say it's a miracle, right? I mean, like now I just if I get two speeches, I will pay for my year and I will be able to open up the center because what's happened is that I've been paying for the mailing. That's the problem. And so I can't continue doing all of it. So
Yeah.
if I got two speeches, it would cover the entire center and it would cover my entire year. Now, if that call happened, you would all say it's a miracle. Last week, you were saying that you didn't have the money for the center. And this week, you have all of the money for the center planned for the entire year. It's a miracle. It is a miracle. But how would it happen? Because somebody would have gone to my website, read my materials, gone to my YouTube, watched hours and hours and hours of video that I've done, read my recommendations, called the meeting planners who've hired me before to find out that I'm easy to work with. Like, I had done the work to enable that miracle to happen, should that be the outcome that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. Because I made the pleas, I'm not relying, I'm not saying that I'm going to sit here in silence and somebody's going to call me and offer me enough money to do a speech that would pay for the center. But I'm also not saying I'm working for the outcome. What did I say to you? Maybe the center isn't what Hashem wants. So I'm doing other things, right? Or maybe Hashem wants the center to come in another way, right? And so there's other pleas that I'm making. And this is our hishtadlut. And this is what I came to. This is sort of hishtadlut versus bitachon from a recovering a personality, right? Like this is like, right? 30-year-old me would not have known this, right? 30-year-old me who was striving during the internet boom in Silicon Valley was like striving, right? I didn't understand like where to, but it's also the balance that we learn, right? Like, it's also not all just sitting and working at McDonald's and waiting for your divine inspiration. You know, that's not doing your hishtadlut either, right? So, and also remember the whole Myers-Briggs thing. We're all sort of wired a certain way. Okay, I'm wired a little more hyperactive, but there's other people who are, I know, shocker. But other people are wired a little more too complacent. So they learn from these in another way. I'm just going to check here. Time questions. Hi, George, Amelia, Verlac, Rachel. Look at all these people. It's so nice. Ruth. Ruth Slotnick is one of our like early supporters of this work. Hi. It's so exciting, right? That we're all going on this journey together from America, from Australia. We're with all of you. Some of our people are in Australia right now. We love you so much. So, this is it. We all go on this journey together when it's bad, when it's hard. And here we are in the first night of Hanukkah. 7 days, 8 days, miracles. We find what we look for. We find what we focus on. So what I want to give you the opportunity, the gift for yourself is to start looking for the miracles that you already are. You know, the things that are already in you, the things that are already in your life, the matzonot that you've already received, the gifts you've already received, the people, and then really look at sort of like ways that you're creating klees, right? And that kli could be for in the hishtadlut of a relationship. The kli could be in the hishtadlut of your personal health. The kli could be in the hishtadlut of your financial health. The kli could be in your own growth from whatever, right? Like, so what are the klis you're setting up and what are the miracles that are already coming? And also this sort of like just this letting it, just this being quiet, right? Like, I say when I hit a brick wall, it's the wrong way. Open a window, right? Like there's no reason to keep hitting the brick wall. Like, in my apartment that I just came out of, in 2 weeks' time, I ended up with the whole building had no gas, no hot water, no, the electricity kept coming on and off. I had no working oven. That was apartment centric, not the building. And after 15 months of being on a total month to month, the landlord said, get out. Now, I could have leaked whatever. I could have like fought it. I could have stayed. Of course, I could have done all of that. Like logistically, I could have done all of that. Like 2 weeks is like usually you get way more than 2 weeks with or without a lease. Of course, I could have. I'm done brick walling my life. I heard a telegram that said, Gabriella, go now. Right? Like, how much more? No hot water, so I went. And so that's part of, we make it easier for ourselves when we're willing to listen and be more in sync with what is happening, because everything that is happening is exactly as it should be. So instead of trying to push that rock, right, up the whole, like, that there's never going to go, we could just let it go. We could just let it go because it's the climbing that's our work. And that is our avodah, that is our divine service. And our work is not in controlling the outcome. And what do we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu? We learn that Netzach, victory, is in the showing up, right? Victory is in the day-to-day, especially when we don't get the outcome. So again, I'll take it back to something very personal, right? We come to January 1st. I've done all of these things. We don't raise enough money. I can't open the center. But every week I've been feeding families. Last week we connected 22 families to emergency assistance. 22 families where the husband has returned from Gaza after 2 years and is no longer getting a reservist check, but has no job, has no business, and has months of recovery. 22 of those fine people who have served us came to me last week and said they would like emergency household goods and food. That toilet paper, yes, would make a difference to them. And of course, we want to do this with dignity. I mean, these are the people who've served us, right? So do I know, like, I want to do the center. Of course I want to do the center. I want to do the center for like so long I can't even tell you. But the victory is in the week that we already had when I was homeless. Okay. And so I want to leave you with this, right? I don't have a kitchen. Okay. And our magic pot, for anybody who's read about Gabby's place, we had this magic pot that I wrote all about, and we had a picture painted about, and it was confiscated. It was taken back from the people who lent it to us. I didn't realize it was such a loan. So we didn't even have, so no kitchen, no roof over our head, no magic pot. That's what I want to say to you. Okay. People came, and for 2 days we cooked and we peeled and we put out a complete Shabbos from challah all the way through to dessert for families here in Netanya. And we did it in the middle of the crazy storms, when like the roads were flooded. And I said that it was like Miriam's well or the cloud of Sarah. And I'm going to leave you with this, which is two of the times. Sarah, when they were in the desert all of her life, Avram's tent was covered with a cloud of blessing, which came from Sarah. That blessing came from her merit. And then when the Jews were wandering around in the desert during, they were living on man, have you ever wondered how they drank? Okay, good question. I'm glad you asked. Because Miriam, Moshe's sister, wherever she went, there was a brand new well. And so all of the time when the Jewish people went through the desert, they had beautiful drinking water that was filled with broth up until they were about to come into Israel. And at that time, Miriam, the well went one way, the Jewish people went the other way. And it said that the Miriam's well ended up in the Kinneret, in the Sea of Galilee. And so when I went there, the first time I spoke in Tiberia, I think last year at the Mashiach Festival, it was a lot of fun. The first time I said Kinneret, I said Shechianu, because it was like this amazing, well, what else is my Miriam? What is the water of Miriam? It's the water we have on Shabbat. When we heat up the water in the urn and then Shabbos is over, we've made Havdalah and you still have this hot water. It's called Mayim Miriam, right? It's the continuation of these beautiful brachas. And so this is what I saw this past week when we were cooking, right? We didn't have a home. We no longer had a magic pot. And then what walks in but a mixer? Somebody brought me a mixer. So now we have a magic mixer, right? So it's find what you focus on and make that beautiful. Celebrate your victories, right? And know that you are not depending on a miracle, but you're living in one. So thank you so much for another great week with handouts. Thank you, everybody. Send me any questions or anything you'd like. So happy to see you all. I hope I can see who everybody is who came. Send me messages, please. Thank you for whoever's driving in. Eileen, thank you so much. You're driving in the snowstorm. Be careful. I'm glad you enjoyed the lecture. We are not having snow here in Netanya, but I hope you're enjoying it. Wow, all those hearts. I love you guys so much. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Thank you for joining from Israel.